All right, everybody, welcome in to Load the Box. I am your host, Jordan Hawthorne, coming at you live from a very messy basement. I'm joined, as always, by Jack and his relatively clean desk setup. It's the off season. We're buying houses. We're talking quarterbacks. We're wheeling and dealing, and I think every Vikings fan has done at least one mock draft where we play pretend like we traded for Deshaun Watson. Jack, it's been about 2 weeks since we did our first mock draft. I thought the mock draft went very well. Immediate Super Bowl contenders. The phones are waiting for phone calls from Slick Rick to bring us on as scouts or something. But uh, you know, how's your week been? First of all, and let the people know what we're doing tonight here on this special show.
Realistic chance of him landing in Minnesota. I'm not really saying that Zach Wilson or Justin Fields are either really going to have a legit chance. I mean, there's mock drafts where there's 4 quarterbacks going off the board with the first 4 picks. And I know I've seen some where it's like the top 4. And I think Trey Lance is kind of that consensus number 4. I shouldn't even say consensus because there's people that have Trey Lance ahead of Zach Wilson even, which is kind of crazy to me. And I've seen people that have Zach Wilson ahead of Trevor Lawrence. So it's going to be a super fun show to talk about these guys, and it's going to be an extremely fun draft to watch. And I thought to top it all off, I had to rock the best quarterback of all time while we're doing our quarterback show. Brand new shirt that I haven't even worn yet. So got a little excited. And I was like, we're talking quarterbacks. I have to rock Tom Brady drunkenly getting off of his boat parade after winning the 7th Super Bowl.
Oh man, that is so good. So, mistake on my part. The beginning of the speech was muted because I forgot to click a button. Because I'm getting used to this new microphone and the new software that I'm using. But luckily the chat is blowing up saying that they can hear you now, Jack. So,
Perfect.
the part that you guys missed was Jack talking about how Minnesota had, I think you said like an 80-degree swing. like, Ohio, I think, had closer to like a 40-degree swing where we went from having, I had 2 inches of ice on my windshield. You can't really see it all that well anymore, but I sliced my knuckle open on a big shot of ice and chipping it off my windshield last week. To riding home with the windows down today in 61-degree weather. So it's springtime, and I think it's coming. Nathan Nickel is mad that we've changed the logo, of course, because he designed the old logo. Which the new logo is, you know, we're implementing it everywhere that we can. It's the off season, so honestly, right now you know, I'm watching my hockey. I'm getting big into my hockey, and I think Jack is definitely enjoying the off season as well. But we're here to talk about potentially the Vikings drafting a replacement for Cousins in this draft. So I I want to preface this by saying that just because we talk about somebody like we're probably going to spend 30 seconds on Trevor Lawrence, we understand the Jaguars are taking Trevor Lawrence, and I don't think there's much question. I mean, he's having surgery on his non-throwing shoulder. He's still, the best prospect since Elway, whatever you want to say. He's coming in. He's going to be, the number one pick. I would put every dime I have on it. And then you can start talking about guys like Zach Wilson and Justin Fields, Mac Jones, Kyle Trask. There's a lot of names that start falling down, and I think Trask is one that's interesting for the Vikings because I can't tell what people think of him. Some people think he is like maybe going to sneak into the first round, and some people think he's going to fall into like the late third. So we'll kind of see what happens. But Jack, I'm going to let you kick us off. We'll talk about some of the bigger name guys. that we really don't think we're gonna get. And then I think we do have some late round guys that we think you guys should go watch some highlight tape on and maybe get yourself a little excited about maybe seeing them in the purple and gold next year.
Yeah, and we can just briefly kind of graze over Lawrence as well, because I don't think, I mean, like you said, there's really no realistic chance unless the Vikings are willing to part with. I've heard 2 to 3 first round picks to get up into that one spot, and moving from about halfway through the draft, I don't think that's extremely realistic. I don't think if the Vikings aren't willing to go out and get a guy like Deshaun Watson with 3 first round picks, I don't think there's any realistic chance of them trading up at a
No, absolutely
guy
not.
that is supposed to be pretty good, but we've seen guys that are supposed to be pretty good not pan out at the next level as well.
Which
But
I'm tired of this every year. There's the obvious number one pick. Like last year it was Joe Burrow, and I don't know. I think ESPN and like Fox Sports, I think they do it just to drum up ratings and YouTube clicks. Where they're like the Jaguars are listening to offers for the number one pick. They're not trading that number one pick.
no.
You could offer them your entire franchise. They're not trading the number one pick because they'll because if Trevor Lawrence is what we think he is, then how dumb are you that you traded him away for, number 14 and you maybe got a good D tackle. So like I hate that about the offseason, all that speculation, but
Yeah, and I think there's another comparison. I know you said Elway, that's one that's gotten thrown around, but more for like the modern era of football. I think he's very comparable coming out of college to a guy like Andrew Luck, just because he is so highly touted that like that's the guy that people want. Like you said, if there's 32 teams, I guess that's not fully true either, because there's teams like the Chiefs and stuff like that. I would put a lot of money down that a good majority, for sure over half, probably you get into the 20s, 25. Most of the franchises in the NFL, if they get that number one pick, they're going to go with Trevor Lawrence. And that's
Absolutely.
just, consensus. I know there's people out there that are saying there's certain scouts and certain front offices that believe that Zach Wilson is a better prospect than Lawrence. I don't agree with that. And I think this show, we've proved this in the past, we're a Stan account essentially for Zach Wilson. So
friend of the show.
yes, friend of the show as well. But sliding into that kind of tier 2, if you will, I think Justin Fields and Zach, at least for myself, that's where Zach Wilson and Justin Fields live. I think you can Trey Lance, I read an article on Trey Lance today, and I do think that he is getting, the one game that he played this year, not having a full season and not having those individual workouts, it's hurting Trey Lance's draft stock. But I still have seen plenty of mock drafts that have Trey Lance going in the top 5, in the top 8, top 10. So I think it would be fair to put him in that category, in that tier 2 level, because I think there's a clear drop off from those 3. And then a guy like Mac Jones. I think those 3 are guys that I would prefer. Like, I wouldn't be overly upset if the Vikings took any of the 3. If they traded up, I'm hoping they're trading up for Justin Fields or Zach Wilson. I do not want to trade up for, for Lance. I'm not the biggest fan of him. I know there's a lot of people that disagree with me, and I don't see him. And now that I say this, he's going to be the best quarterback in this draft class probably. But I have a slight edge to Zach Wilson and Justin Fields. And now if you break it down a little bit further, I know both you and I are huge Zach Wilson fans. We think he's going to do some pretty impressive things in the NFL. I think he's so good off script. He's very, very accurate. He's athletic, but he is kind of, because of the season he's kind of started to bump ahead of Justin Fields, which is surprising to some, and it's surprising to myself too. And I think, in my opinion, the order is Lawrence, Fields, and then Wilson. I think Justin Fields is kind of, there's people talking about his read progressions. I think that's going to infuriate Justin Fields. And what we saw out of Justin Fields in the semifinals, where he took that shot to the ribs and then still delivered to get his team. He quite literally put his team on the back and was delivering some beautiful balls while he was like in severe, severe pain. And the toughness level for the quarterback is something that you have to have when you get to the next level, especially if you're coming to be a Minnesota Viking, because you're going to get hit. If you're a Minnesota Viking next year behind this offensive line, just be prepared. I know Kirk Cousins is probably already prepared, but if we draft a quarterback, you got to be ready to get hit with the offensive line play that we've had over the last 3 seasons. But I think Justin Fields is another guy who has elite accuracy. He's very athletic as well. And he was right up there with Trevor Lawrence in that recruiting class coming out of high school, and they've kind of battled neck and neck throughout college. And in my opinion, now they're 1 and 2 in the 2021 draft class.
Yeah, so I disagree with you. I put Fields at 3. I think it goes Lawrence, Wilson, steep drop off, Fields, and Lance. And I actually think Fields and Lance are closer than some people may think. Just from you look at how they both play the game, and they have similar styles. They're both pretty athletic. They both can. They both have cannons for arms. They can really sling the ball around. And I don't know, Justin Fields, to me, when I watch him play in some of these games, like against Indiana and in some of the bad games that he's had, it seems like he's always been the most athletic guy on the football field, and he's been able to use that to his advantage. And good on you. That's how college football and high school football works, is usually somebody's going to be the best athlete on the field, and that kid ends up going to Ohio State, and that kid ends up being Justin Fields, and now he's going into the NFL. I wonder how he's going to react to defensive ends that are faster than him at the NFL level, and not being able to just use his speed to maybe put the team on his back a little bit. But he did impress me a whole lot with that performance that he had in the semifinal against Clemson. I know Ohio State fans wanted Clemson bad. Like, they wanted revenge on Clemson bad. So that game meant a lot to, him and his fan base. And for him to, that shot, still to this day, I wake up and my gut hurts, because I'm like, oh, golly, that was a cheap shot. I want to take 1 second here, and I got to kind of pick through the crap that's in the comments right now, because it's a crapshoot. I got, we got Nathan Nickel and Jeff Hawthorne and Josh Hawthorne going back and forth a little bit. But let's see. Billy Biskupski in the chat saying just keep Jack muted. Can't do that. Can't do that, unfortunately.
He is a Zach Wilson truther as well. And I have one question that you can answer this in the chat as well for anyone who's listening. This is a question for you, though, Jordan. In your opinion, where would you rank Justin Fields in terms of like the last great quote unquote? I mean, they had Dwayne Haskins. I'm putting Justin Fields very far ahead of where I had Dwayne Haskins personally.
Oh, yeah.
And I think there's a little bit, I've had this conversation with Billy. I think there's a little bit of that narrative just because we've seen success from Ohio State quarterbacks. I think Justin Fields is going to be different than those guys. I've had that conversation. I know that we have other quarterbacks to talk to as well, but I am a huge fan of Justin Fields, and I've kind of stuck by that even through the Indiana games, through that Northwestern game. I know they dealt with a lot of COVID stuff, a lot of injuries on Ohio State's team as well. So he's been through some stuff. They battled some adversity. And I think at the end of the day, there's a guy named Thor. I can't remember his last name. He writes for NBC, and I follow him on Twitter. And he had his rankings. He actually was one of the guys that had Trey Lance ahead of Zach Wilson. But he has Fields at 2, and his player comp for Justin Fields is Deshaun Watson. And I might end up stealing that from him because I like that comparison. I think you see flashes of the accuracy. Yes, it has taken him a little bit longer to read through some of his progressions, but I think that's something that can be taught at the next level. And keep in mind, we're talking about the Vikings drafting a quarterback. If Justin Fields falls because he can't read through his progressions quite as fast as a guy like Zach Wilson, and it makes him fall to 14, give me Justin Fields in a Vikings uniform sitting behind Kirk Cousins for the next couple of years, kind of easing into the offense, and then hand him over the keys when you have Irv Smith hitting the prime of his career, Justin Jefferson, Dalvin Cook, all those guys hitting the prime of their careers. And hopefully by that time, whenever that would be 2-3 years down the road, hopefully there is a somewhat established offensive line at that time as well.
Absolutely. And I just have to let you know, the chat 100% disagrees with you. Nobody in the chat is showing Justin Fields any love. Joshua Dalton Hawthorne says not in the top 5. I would say Justin Fields is, out of the recent Ohio State quarterbacks to come out, is probably the best. Now, is that saying a lot when his biggest competition is probably Dwayne Haskins? And well, he has a team. He's on the Steelers, so he has that going for him. Nathan Nichols saying Justin Fields doesn't have the mental skill to succeed. He's a bad decision maker who got bailed out by elite athletes. And then Jeff Hawthorne just simply stating that Justin will not be a great professional quarterback. This is where I want to shift the conversation, because odds are he's going to the Atlanta Falcons, in my opinion. I think that, he's from that area. You get your hometown guy. It's like, it just makes too much sense. It's almost like if the Vikings and had a chance to get Trey Lance, which I think they will. I think there's going to be a lot of upset Vikings fans if we don't draft the Minnesota kid that, can come in and save the team and win the Super Bowl or whatever, some of the fan base wants. But I want to talk about two guys that may be there later in the first round if the Vikings decide to trade back, and may even be there late in the second round if the Vikings decide to trade up to get back into the second round. And that's Mac Jones and Kyle Trask, because these are the two guys. Kyle Trask, I mean, my God, that guy can sling it. I mean, he can really, really sling it. Now, you take away his, best tight end in the nation, and all of a sudden he doesn't look so effective anymore. So how much of that is his talent versus how much of that is the talent around him? And then Mac Jones, it's the same question. It's pretty easy to win when you've got Devonta Smith and the running back whose name I can't think of because I haven't.
Not Najee Harris.
Thank you. And Najee Harris, and you have Nick Saban calling the shots, and you've got all of this. So I'm really curious as to, where these guys are going to fall, and if the Vikings have any interest in these kind of the very upper middle round QBs. What do you think of a guy like Mac Jones out of Alabama? I mean, I've seen Case Keenum, Baker Mayfield, kind of the comparison for him. Like, yeah, he's all right. He just needs a lot around him to succeed. I like him personally. I don't think I want the Vikings to take him because I think we can address other positions and just draw with Cousins, who already has his limits. But what do you think of a guy like Mac Jones?
I think he has a chance to be an average quarterback at the next level. If the Vikings draft a quarterback, I want it to be because either they're taking the heir to Kirk Cousins, which I don't know if you're actually getting that in Mac Jones and Kyle Trask. I guess you don't know if you're getting that in Trey Lance, Zach Wilson, or Justin Fields, or even Trevor Lawrence at that point either. But if we trade back and those are the only quarterbacks, like I said, if we're at 14 and we see one of those top three start to slide, I'm more than okay with the Vikings either trading up, trying to get a guy like Fields or Zach Wilson, or if they fall all the way to 14, sure, take your shot on one of them then. But my biggest preference in this draft has been to just trade back and try to get that second round pick back. There are a lot of needs this team has on the defensive line, the offensive line. I think the wide receiver 3 spot is a glaring need as well. And then you have literally no depth at the linebacker position, no depth at safety. You still have a lot of young corners as well. So I'm not going to be shocked. I think last year we've had this conversation already that we kind of knew going into the draft, like, hey, who are the wide receivers we should be keeping our eye, not going in the draft, after the Diggs trade, I should say. Who are the wide receivers in this draft that could be there for the Vikings? Who are the cornerbacks that could be there for the Vikings this year? And this has a little bit to do with free agency still being a month away. I would not be shocked if the Vikings went cornerback, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, if a guy like Micah Parsons falls, or if a guy like Devonta Smith falls. I'm not going to be shocked if they take a wide receiver. Personally, I would go best player available, and at that kind of range, I don't think either of those two quarterbacks is going to be the best player available. So I'd prefer, and I'll finish with those two on this. The reason why I want to draft a quarterback is to kind of get into this new era of football where you get some mobility, you get a gunslinger, you try to find your diamond in the rough in a Patrick Mahomes. You don't go out and get Mac Jones because you currently have a quarterback on your roster that, in my opinion, is going to be better than Mac Jones and Kyle Trask for the next 5 to 7 years.
Exactly.
So I think you and I can both kind of agree with that we think I don't want to necessarily go be aggressive for a quarterback like that. I do know I say I want someone to sit behind Kirk Cousins, but I think you can find someone in the 3rd or 4th round that has possibly just as much upside as some of those guys do, and it allows you to address some bigger pressing needs earlier on in the draft.
So Nathan Nickel in the chat said, take Mac in the 2nd before you roll the dice and trade up for Wilson and Fields. So from what I'm understanding, you and Nathan just have completely different outlooks on the quarterback class this year. So that's funny to me. And then Joshua Dalton Hawthorne, who is my brother, is cracking me up saying Beto Carrillo, Mac Jones, or Sam Darnold, which I think is an actual. That's a interesting question on who's going to end up having
Who
the
was the
Beto
last
Carrillo.
one? I kind of cut out a little bit for me.
Mac Jones or Sam Darnold.
Ooh,
Right?
wow.
Especially if he gets traded, who knows where he's going to end up. But then he also said a better comparison for Justin Fields is not Deshaun Watson, but Geno Smith. So
See, I don't agree with that. But I think honestly, at this point in their careers, obviously, you know what you're gonna get out of Sam Darnold. I would, if the Vikings were to somehow not have Kirk Cousins on their team, I think I would almost lean towards Sam Darnold than Mac Jones right now because he has he's been in the league for a couple of years, and I think he's playing in one of the worst organizations in the last 5 years. The Jets
oh
have
my
been
God, they're
atrocious.
terrible.
They haven't given him a lot of very good protection. He doesn't have good playmakers around him. And I don't know. I think he could be more of in that Kirk Cousins category if he was given a little bit more talent to work with.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll quickly give my opinion on Trask and Jones, and I share the same opinion as you. There's so many holes on this team. Well, you're talking about the depth at safety. We need a stouting safety. Anthony Hayes is packing his stuff, and he is leaving town. Like he is moving out.
I will say, I know this is the quarterback show, and we talked about this guy last year. I've had some conversations with other people as well. Keep an ear out or an eye out, whatever you want to say, for Miles Dorn potentially getting some work. I think that's the guy that a lot of people were high on when he fell out of the draft and went undrafted from North Carolina. I think there's a lot of people within that building that really like Miles Dorn, and I think it sucks because he got hurt, so they didn't get to see him play at all this year. But I think that's a guy that they have high hopes for, and I'll keep this in mind as well. Anthony Harris was an undrafted safety as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, the Vikings have not a long track record, but I feel like what they were able to do with Harris and Sendejo, these and right with the secondary. So I think that because of all the holes that are on the defense, you can build a stronger offense by solidifying the O line. And maybe you do that later in the draft, and you take a guy like, here we go, YOLO, balls to the walls, Devonta Smith at 14. Just go all in. Randy Moss, part 2, only this time he's really small. But if you want to take another weapon or you want to do something, like you said, you want to draft best player available whenever you have a lot of needs, and I don't think Kyle Trask. I think Kyle Trask is gonna. Because, there's probably going to be 5 quarterbacks in the first round, I would say. I think Trask is going in the second round, and that's just a little bit too rich for my blood. So I think talking about these guys, which I think we each have one that we're going to bring up and really go into detail on. I'm going to go ahead and go with mine first because I'm really excited about him, and I fell in love with him a while ago. Now, granted, look, okay, we understand. Nope, I don't think the 6th round pick is going to come in and take Cousins' job day one. But it would be nice to have a 6th round pick come in, show signs of life in training camp in the preseason, if there is a preseason. And then, he's the backup. And then, God forbid, something does happen to Cousins. Well, let's see what the kid can do. And then you never know, until you see what they can do and they get out there. So the guy
Can I take that one step further before you get into
go ahead.
I just want to say, I think, as a Viking fan, I don't think they should necessarily be looking at a replacement for Kirk Cousins right now. And if that means it's Zach Wilson, if it means it's Trey Lance, if it means it's Geno Smith, aka Justin Fields, if that's what you guys want to compare him to, let him learn behind Kirk Cousins for a year. I think we're drafting now, in my personal opinion, the Vikings need to draft to replace Sean Mannion. It's more of a replacement for Sean Mannion than it is for Kirk Cousins. Yes, it might be a long-term solution for getting out of Kirk Cousins' contract, but Sean Mannion is not the answer. If Kirk Cousins gets hurt, this team will not sniff the playoffs. There will not be a magical Case Keenum-like season out of Sean Mannion, but you might get that out of some kid that Jordan and myself are going to talk about, that you keep on the depth chart. He starts dressing and he starts hearing the lingo. He's on the sidelines with the headset on, knows everything that's going on with Kirk Cousins and in that huddle. I think that's what this team should be drafting for over an actual replacement, which, like I said, it can eventually be a replacement for Kirk Cousins. but not in the foreseeable future.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I don't think that we're trying to replace Cousins with the guys that we're going to talk about. But the guy that I'm going to talk about, his name's Shane Buechele. Started for 3 years at Texas. You know, homes down. Um, and then ended up transferring after Sam Ellinger came in and took that job from him. He went to SMU. Now that they're bowl eligible again, and they're actually going to be able to be a football program again. Went there. It was not the a powerhouse by any means. It's SMU, but did show some things that a lot of people really liked. He has one trait that I always look for in a quarterback, and I'm gonna toot my own horn a little bit. I called Joe Burrow 3 weeks into the season last year, and I called Zach Wilson 1 week into the season this year. I called Baker Mayfield whenever he was on his hot streak, but that one was easier because he was lighting it up and he was at Oklahoma and it was a big name school. The ability to get out of the pocket while keeping your eyes downfield is something that I think these kids that have grown up and they kind of have modeled their game around guys like Aaron Rodgers, who are more mobile, and that's what kills you with Aaron Rodgers is that he can make your corners have to cover for 10 seconds at a time, and he can he rolls out. Eventually, somebody gets open, and he keeps those eyes down the field. He's not looking to run; he's just looking to buy time. Guys that do that at the college level, I think have a better chance of succeeding than guys that just immediately say, "Oh, the pocket collapsed. Let's take off and get 5 and slide and live to play another down." I like the guy that's gonna run around, buy some time, find somebody open, and then hit like a 20 to 25 yard pass. Now, where Buechele reminds me a lot of Zach Wilson, in the just kind of the style, the ability to be athletic. I don't think he's as good of an athlete as Zach Wilson. He can get out of the pocket, he can move, he's got some good athletics to him. His arm strength is not as good as Zach Wilson's. Zach Wilson there was this beautiful ball that he threw this season from like the 50-yard line. He was on like the right sideline and he hit the the left pylon. Like it was a very good pinpoint throw that he made, and I don't think Shane Buechele can make that throw even in his dreams. He has average arm strength at best. That's kind of his issue, is he's a gunslinger that can't really sling it as good as he wants to. So while I think he would be a little bit limited, he's not going to come in and run an air raid or anything. I think he would be a good fit to come in if he had to. Maybe it's put him on the practice squad for a year and then next year he's the backup, or maybe he really picks things up quick. He could come in if he did have to come in and play for a month or so, because that's what you want out of your backup quarterback. Is you don't want him to have to play an entire season. You want him to be able to go 2-2 over a month stretch. So if he had to come in for a month, I think he could hand the ball off efficiently to Dalvin, run kind of a West Coast scheme, and really eat underneath. He has good decision making. He has good accuracy. And I would really suggest that you go watch some highlights of the guy, because he is pretty fun to watch play. But he's a small school quarterback, and he has his downfalls. So that's Shane Buechele. That's my sales pitch on him. I think he's projected to go in like the 5th or 6th round right now. Whether the quarterback tax bumps him up any sooner, I think the 5th is the earliest I would draft him. Anywhere before that, somebody I don't know what they see that I don't, but they clearly like him a lot more than me. So I know your guy is projected to go a lot sooner than that. So I'll let you get into him and kind of give me that sales pitch.
Yeah, he's a little bit earlier, and just kind of speaking on that quarterback tax, I think this is the guy that could actually benefit from that this year. I think there's a lot of guys that can actually, like a Kyle Trask probably should get drafted in that 3rd to 4th round range, in my opinion, but there's a chance he gets bumped up to the 2nd round, just because we're potentially going to see one of the most historic quarterback classes in our lifetime. And I may have said this on the show a couple weeks ago, but there's a 30 for 30 called Elway to Marino.
Oh yeah, it's a good one.
Year where there's like 5 quarterbacks drafted the year of Marino and Elway, obviously. But I think this could be another quarterback class like that. You just mentioned if Mac Jones goes in the first round, that's 5 quarterbacks to go in the first round. There still might be some quarterback needy teams out there, or backup quarterback needy teams like the Minnesota Vikings. And this guy, Kellen Mond out of Texas A&M, he's the guy that's been playing against SEC defenses. And I mean, the guys we're talking about at this point in the draft, they can all be labeled as projects. I think you can label some of the earlier round guys as projects as well. But Kellen Mond intrigues me because he has enough athleticism, but he's not like the greatest athlete. He's not Lamar Jackson. I don't think that's necessarily what the Vikings need. I don't think they want to draft a guy like Lamar Jackson where you have to completely shift the offensive game plan into a guy that's going to use his legs a lot more frequently. Kellen Mond actually does a little bit. I mean, he does use his legs rather frequently, but he sits in the pocket for too long at times. But this guy has very good arm strength, like those intermediate throws, those 15-yard ins, 15-yard outs. Those are the type of routes that this guy, he can sling the ball and he can hit his wide receivers in stride. Like I said, he's taken some hits at Texas A&M playing up against some of those really good SEC defenses. I have some notes written down. Good throw power, and he can hit tight windows, which are two signs that I think you need out of any quarterback getting to the next level. I think you see a lot of guys come in where they have their arm strength is not there. You can't teach arm strength, and Kellen Mond has the arm strength to make it at the next level. And you can teach the sitting in the pocket and taking some unnecessary hits. You can teach that out of him. My last note on him, I just said he makes some really pretty throws. He makes some throws. Yes, he makes some poor decisions where, as Jordan Hawthorne would call him, a YOLO ball. He does do that rather frequently, but that's another thing that's teachable. And I think you can teach that, get that out of his arsenal. And I think he's a guy, like, he's going to be 3rd to 4th round, give or take. In my opinion, he's going to go somewhere in there unless that quarterback tax is super high and it somehow bumps him into the 2nd round. But those are the rounds where you're seeing guys, and I don't know if he's exactly comparable to either of these guys, but when I look at Kellen Mond, I see a guy that you can potentially draft and might start hearing a little bit of early buzz on that quarterback around camp, like you did with the Russell Wilson or you did with the Dak Prescott. No, I'm not saying that Kellen Mond is going to be Russell Wilson or Dak Prescott, but if he comes in, I think he's a guy that I keep saying he's a guy. I don't know if I have Chris Collinsworth just stuck in my mind for some reason right now or what, but he can come in, take over that Sean Mannion role, the backup quarterback role, and be that, hey, Kirk just threw 3 interceptions against the Atlanta Falcons. What's this Kellen Mond kid? What can he do? It's going to get some buzz around the fans or the fan base. I don't know if the Vikings necessarily want that because I think Kirk Cousins is their guy, but I think the fan base needs a guy like that. I think the Vikings would be smart to have a guy like that on their roster where if Kirk Cousins goes in and he has one of those awful, atrocious games, there's a new kid sitting on that bench that's waiting for his turn, and when he gets in there, I hope he's not going to mess it up. I watched a 45-minute Tom Brady documentary where when Robert Kraft drafted him, he looked him in the eyes and he said, "You just made the best decision of your life."
Yep.
I want that quarterback. I want someone that's going to come in here and he's going to bust his ass to not only one day be the starting quarterback, but I want him to push Kirk Cousins to be the best possible version of himself as well. We're not getting that with Sean Mannion, and I think you get that with a quarterback, any of these guys that you draft in the 3rd or 4th round. That's kind of that sweet spot in this draft class for me.
I agree. I just have to point out, I listened to everything you said, but our dads are fighting in the chat right now. Because my dad is a big believer that we shouldn't draft a quarterback because we've had, historically, we have success bringing in free agents. And your dad brought up Culpepper, and I have to correct it because I saw it, and they both are incorrect. Because my dad said Culpepper and Teddy are the only quarterbacks we drafted to win a playoff game in the last 40 years. And your dad said that's a true statement, but it's not. Teddy never won a playoff game. We shanked that kick. He didn't win the game. He should have, but he didn't. So you're both wrong. And I just had to point it out.
Didn't Christian Ponder get us to the playoffs too?
When Adrian Peterson was 7 yards away.
I'm throwing gas on the fire there. But I'll say this too. You can't look at the past and be like, well, we drafted Christian Ponder, we drafted Teddy Bridgewater.
But you know what? You look at the Christian Ponder draft, that same season, we brought in a free agent quarterback. We brought in Donovan McNabb to be the answer, or at least the bridge for Christian Ponder, and both of them sucked. It's not an easy position to just pick somebody up and say, "Oh, you're going to be Tom Brady now. Go win a 7."
Yeah, that
Like
whole era just has me like reminiscing on bad memories, like the Joe Webb era, the
oh man.
weird, and this might be the weirdest one, Josh Freeman era.
Oh my
Like people,
god.
we don't need to
No,
go down
I
that
love talking about the
really
Josh Freeman game when
we don't need to go down that dark hole. But I'll just say that, and this is kind of the same thing that I've said. The people that are saying they don't, you can close your ears now because I'm going to bring up Justin Fields again. But the argument for Justin Fields, one of the biggest arguments for him is, hey, this kid played at Ohio State. What great quarterback has come out of Ohio State? I don't know. Honestly, I don't know off the top of my head, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stop taking chances on a kid that is impressive to me. Like, I mean, what I want the Vikings to do this year is get someone in here to develop behind Kirk Cousins. That's what we've seen Patrick Mahomes did. That project in quotes worked out just fine for them. Aaron Rodgers project worked out okay for him. Jimmy Garoppolo project, second round quarterback that for now at least has a starting job in San Francisco. But you can't look at the past. You have to just, I mean, you can't scout the player, or you can't scout the helmet. You have to scout the player. And I think that's a quote that you can also use. I mean, it'd be a little bit different, obviously, but you can't look at the past and say, hey, we haven't had good luck with quarterbacks in the past. That doesn't, I think, I'm just spitting stuff out now and rambling again, but that doesn't negate the fact that, hey, the Vikings could strike gold and they could find their Patrick Mahomes if they're willing to take the chance. It's unlikely, but if the Vikings drafted a quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round every single year, I would not be opposed to doing that.
No.
Always bringing in fresh legs, a new arm, new talent that can push people to get to the better versions of themselves. And I think we need that desperately right now, because a quarterback like that is going to make Kirk Cousins a better quarterback, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I'm gonna finish off with this because I think we're about it on max runtime. And it's always fun and it's always very divisive to talk about quarterbacks, especially on the internet, because everybody's got opinions. And with that position, they got strong ones. So, some people, and it's funny because my group of people, are from Ohio, and all of them hate Ohio State. So they show Justin Fields no love because my family's Notre Dame fans. Nathan Nickel in the chat is a big Florida fan. So, none of them are big Ohio State fans. But I'm going to leave it at this. The Vikings do have a chance this year. And maybe they don't. Maybe Deshaun Watson wouldn't waive the no-trade clause to come play up here. I think he would, personally. Why wouldn't you? But I have to think that the Vikings, if they wanted to move up and get one of the big 3 quarterbacks, they could. They have the late draft capital. They have, a first round next year. They could make it happen if they really wanted to move up to get a quarterback that way. They could also go the free agent route or the trade route. Well, somebody else brought Deshaun Watson in, but we're going to give up, X, Y, Z and a million draft picks to bring him in, and they could do that. Oh, they can stick with Cousins and probably make the playoffs next year because it's going to be an odd year or whatever. So, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I always tell my wife that there's something cool about being a team, and I really have never felt it because I was pretty young whenever we drafted Christian Pondo. I mean, I wasn't young, but I wasn't big into football then. The first quarterback that I fell in love with was Teddy, and he was pick 32, so he was by no means a hyped up, draft prospect. There's something about being a team that drafts a quarterback in the top 10, and it's it's pure hope that you can just feel all over you, that you're just this guy represents everything for my football team because he is the savior of my football team. And the Vikings aren't in that spot right now because Cousins is fine. That's just how it is. But the question is, do we want to be fine or do we want to be great? And I think I don't know what the Vikings are going to do in 2 years when Cousins' contract is up. Maybe we let him walk. And that's that, that's, and then we move on and we address the quarterback position however we do. Whatever we do, I agree with you. Start drafting quarterbacks before the 7th round. Don't wait until your 18th, 7th round pick to take Nate Stanley again, because that's just dumb. Actually invest in the position. And let's get a good backup in here that could maybe have a Case Keenum run if need be. Because he's got a little bit of gunsling on him, so I'm gonna leave it off with that. Jack, if you want to like speed run through a couple other QBs, just name some names, kind of what you like, what you dislike, or something. I will leave that up to you. But other than that, I'm ready for you to hype me up and get me ready.
Yeah, there's not. I think you just did a really good job with that. I think what you're saying about, I think hope is a word that can be used not only for the quarterback position, but just the draft in general. And I think that's why Vikings fans and fans of all 32 teams they get overly obsessive with these mock drafts because there every single year there's 31 teams that end the season disappointed. And every single year those teams, either you're a team like the Kansas City Chiefs, who of course just won it 2 years ago, so I don't feel too sorry about it, but there's teams like the Bills or the Browns that feel like they're just one key piece away. They have their franchise quarterback. They need so-and-so to get them over that hump. And I think the Vikings have, they're picking 14th, one of the lower picks in recent memory. And I think that 14th overall pick, it's going to represent hope, regardless if they even trade back a little bit in the first round and get a second round pick back. Hope is what makes football so fun. Hope is what brings Vikings fans back to the game of football every September, because we don't have a trophy to show for anything, and we still have that hope every single year that carries over. So that's why I have so much fun kind of diving into these players and talking with you, because I think the Vikings fan base in particular, the word hope, just it defines the fan base as a whole, in my opinion, because that's what Vikings fans, that's what they live for, is hope. So a couple other quarterbacks that I have listed, I'm going to say this one more time: Justin Fields, QB2. Chat, roast me. Mac Jones we covered, Kyle Trask we covered, a couple other guys if you just want to watch some film that are kind of in that 3rd to 6th round range. That's a lot of quarterbacks, but a couple that I have written down that if you're a nerd like myself and you want to turn on some film, check these guys out. Mac Jones, obviously we talked about. Kyle Trask we talked about. Sam Ellinger got brought up briefly. More of a show you, he's more of a mobile guy that can kill you with his legs, and he can develop into more of a better pocket passer, but who knows? That's why these 3rd to 6th round, these guys can go anywhere. Felipe Franks from Arkansas, and then you got Buechele as well. And then Jamie Newman, he opted out this year. He played at Wake Forest and was supposed to take over at Georgia, but opted out. So those are just a few names to keep an eye on for Vikings fans. And if you're not a Vikings fan, I think those are names that everyone should be watching, because Jordan said it, that quarterback tax, it's going to be high in 2021. This draft is going to be absolutely insane. There's going to be quarterbacks flying off if the analysts are correct, quarterbacks are going to be flying off the big board pretty quickly on day one of the draft. So it's going to be exciting. I still think it's draft best player available. If you see a quarterback start to slide, don't be afraid to trade up. But personally, I think this is a draft where you almost have to trade back and try to just get more picks. Rick Spielman has hit the 2nd round on the head numerous years in a row. Irv Smith Jr., Delvin Cook was a 2nd round pick. Eric Kendricks was a 2nd round pick. Daniil Hunter was a 3rd round pick. That's his bread and butter, the 2nd and 3rd rounds. We have 3 3rd round picks already. Trade back, get a later first, and sure up some holes on this team, because quarterback, absolutely, it's a lot of fun doing shows like this, but quarterback is not the biggest area of concern on this roster right now. I know there is people out there that believe, hey, if you get a Zach Wilson, it's a game changer automatically. I agree with that. I think if you have a chance, take him, develop him for a year or two. I know that $45 million is a little bit scary for probably some of those people in the front office up at TCO Performance Center. So again, Jordan and myself have absolutely no idea what's going to happen in the draft. We're still a very intriguing free agency season away as well. And absolutely, I think that's going to change up a lot of things as well. But having said that, that's really all I have. We appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, I do want to step in real quick and just say that we'll probably check our Twitter, check the Facebook, follow the Twitter at LTB Vikings, by the way. So that way you can get updates on the show, and you can see whenever we go live and all that. I don't know if we're gonna be going back to weekly or if we're gonna be doing the bi-weekly thing for the off season. Obviously, quarterback show, it's easy to get off the rails talking about You know, I mean, the chat's blown up talking about Fan Talkington and Call Peppo, and you know, we just wanted to talk about how we think this kid from BYU is pretty good. So, um,
Just
we'll
wait
put.
till we get to the wide receiver
I
show
know,
because people
I
are gonna
know.
riot.
I think that we did offense, so we'll probably go with a defensive thing next week. We'll probably just do defensive line in general, cover the edge and probably the interior, kind of talk about some of the big names that the Vikings could be getting. And you know, whenever that's going to be, probably 2 weeks from now, we do have some announcements about the show that me and Jack are hammering out. Either like a later start time, a different day, uh, potentially a second show every week. There's some stuff in the pipeline right now that you know we're excited about and we're getting ready for. So that actually is the last thing that I'll say about that. So you know, just make sure that you follow at LTB Vikings to you know get updates on when the show's going to be, especially in the off season, because we definitely take this very casual in the off season because you know it is you know kind of is what it is. It's not football season. We know that not everybody's chomping at the bit to hear our takes on a third round D tackle. So so yeah, just follow the show. Shout out to Manscaped because I think they still pay us, but I don't know. I don't know. I don't check my bank account anymore. um, but yeah, Jack, I'll let you say the catchphrase and then we can go.
Yeah, I don't have really any, like you said, it's the off season. I think you and I both probably want to grab some dinner and get out of here and go on with our lives. But fun as always. Like Jordan said, make sure you follow the Twitter at LTB Vikings. I think we're approaching 1,100 followers. And last year, this time, we were pushing so hard to get to 1,000 followers. I mean, we started probably when we were doing these shows last year. I can't imagine we were much over 500. So let's start the push for 2,000 followers on Twitter. Make sure that if you follow us there, we'll be tweeting out. I'm going to try to do a better job at just tweeting out when Jordan and myself have an idea of a show coming. Sometimes we don't even fully or aren't fully aware of when a show is coming. But I enjoyed talking quarterbacks with you tonight. I think it was a really fun show, and I'm excited to talk about other positions that are even bigger needs